How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, welcome to everyone to our Soul Wisdom Exchange today. I'm joined by Mayra, Leen, and I'm Regina Curtis of Admatry. I'm a Soul Wisdom mentor, an intuitive artist, and an art channel. And I look forward to talking today with Mayra about all things included in the journey of getting to know your soul wisdom and how to utilize those ways of knowing and being. So, a little bit about Mayra. She's a certified hypnotherapist and founder of Be Out of Your Mind, a company with a mission to inspire people to boldly follow their bliss and get outside of their limited survival brain. Every time I read it, I'm like, I love that. Yes, yes, more of that. Yes, please. Um, Mayra is a Latina from Mexican immigrant parents. She's led teams in Fortune 500 companies, holds degrees from Baylor University and Northwestern University, and now openly shares her joy journey on social media. Again, yes, yes, and more yes. I love it. Welcome. How are
Thank
you?
you. I am good. Okay, just to make sure, it looks like my headphones are like the audio is now coming from my computer. Is there any echo or are we okay?
We're okay. Sounds good to
Okay,
me.
so then
If
I'm
you're
just gonna
on,
keep it like while we were doing the countdown, it like moved and I'm like, oh no. So I was trying to get us
oh
back, but
no, that's okay.
as long as you can hear me, as long as we're good, let's
Yeah, I
keep
think we're
going.
good. And we do have someone on live, so if it's sounding different to anyone else, just let me know in the
Right.
chat, and
Right.
we can work with that. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, how do you identify with soul wisdom?
Yeah.
Tell us about your soul wisdom languages.
Okay, well, first of all, I love the explanation you gave me right before we started this show. Do you mind starting with that? Because I feel like that
Mhm.
helps ground me and
Yeah.
ground everyone on like, what the heck is soul language?
Yes, absolutely. So I define soul wisdom as our authentic, or soul wisdom languages as our authentic ways of knowing or receiving information and being or expressing ourselves. So how do you receive? How do you then integrate that and express? What are those authentic ways that really those languages that you speak and you receive, whether they are it's beyond just the language that we use as far as like our the word I want to use for it, but like English or French or Spanish or anything like that, or even sign language or body language. It's even more than that. Do you feel? Do you receive through light language? There's so many ways that can be received and also expressed.
Yeah, I just love your definition. So I
Oh,
just want
thank
people,
you.
and because one, we know like most people don't even think about that. Like
Mhm.
they don't, I mean, most people don't even acknowledge that a soul exists, right? That we're more than this body and our mind and all of that. And I would say I was that person. I kind of lived in my mind and I
Mhm.
didn't think that there was anything else to utilize to know information, right? It was just
Mhm.
my processing center
Yeah.
and I lived there and that's all I knew. And I have a business engineering background, just super like logical. And so
Yeah.
it honestly, like this whole one, I'm so excited to have this conversation because
Okay.
it's new to me, but it's also so important and has now been like it's now what guides me.
Mhm.
Um, and it's why I call my company Be Out of Your Mind as well, because we operate in this world that's like, use your mind, rationalize it,
Mhm.
do the pros and cons list before you make a decision, like really like create the Excel sheet, write the
Mhm.
features and then write, like even with like relationships, they'll be like, well, make a list of the things that you like about the person, things that you don't like. And if this one's longer than that, then that means that, it's
Then
not.
it's cut and dry, right? Like, and that doesn't even bring in how do you feel about it? How do you feel about this relationship? It's what do you think about it, right? That's
Yes.
the first question we ask. Well, what do you think? What do you think?
Yeah.
Not what do
Yeah.
you feel? Or
Yeah.
how are you experiencing this energetically?
Right.
So I love asking those questions.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think you're already hitting on like kind of what I have now learned to be more my language and how I tune in and how I like know. I
Yeah.
will say it's not easy. And I don't know if it's like just me because of my background and because of like how I just grew up so much in my head.
Mhm.
And because of being in business and just always having to have numbers and always having to, um, just rationalize everything and
Mhm.
having to like, and then you have to get consensus to like get everyone to agree. And this is all opposite of what it means to really live in tune with yourself, which is people will think you're crazy. You're the only person that knows. And
Mhm.
the answer is not going to come from your mind.
Yeah.
Those are like
So
the key. Yeah.
it's interesting to me that you said it's not easy, because I totally agree with that and absolutely disagree with that, because
Okay.
so here's why, right? Because when you really are, let me start with why I agree with it. Because I agree with it because we are living in a world where that is not the most acceptable, valued way of knowing and expressing ourselves, right?
Yes,
Especially
that
being
part.
someone who's been in the world of business. When I would walk into a conference room looking like me, being artistic, being, all the things that I am, and then would come out with something that's a really like innovative statement, or a really obscure way of looking at something, or talk about how I get the sense that, or I feel that, or I imagine, or I vision, right? Those things would immediately put up a blocker, because
Mhm,
those were not the structure from which that world is created or was
mhm,
created, right? Or what it runs on. And
mhm,
that's changing. It's changing slowly, and it's becoming more receptive and
mhm,
accepting of these types of
mhm.
conversations and these languages, these ways of communicating with each other, but um, not fully there yet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And our education system is set up to, really hone in on those ways of knowing that are more logically based: math, science, writing, even communication. Arts are there, but they're not as
You're not core.
valued, right? Yeah, they're not the core learning systems, right?
Mhm.
Um, and who's teaching intuition? Who's teaching that, right? Like when you're when you're going through this formal education and you're in your work world, and you're in your career, and even just like at the grocery store doing life things, right? You
Yeah.
find it maybe in your yoga class, or things like that, but you have to actively seek that out. And the only person who's an expert on intuition and truly your ways of knowing and existing in the world is who?
You.
You,
Yeah,
right? So who's teaching you that you're the authority on yourself?
right.
No one.
No one, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's funny as you say that, I'm like, I feel like I spend a lot of time teaching adults emotional management too,
Hmm.
which is so critical to life. And another key thing that is not taught, that your emotions are there from the moment you're born, and we operate like they don't exist.
Yeah.
Like we don't say like acknowledge them. Here's how you manage them. Here's how
Mhm.
you can kind of, fine tune them, understand them. Like there's so much with
Here's how you
emotion.
can suppress them.
Yeah.
But managing
And what
is
happens with that?
right, but managing them is a very different energy
It's
than
so different.
suppressing,
So
right?
different.
Yeah, it's because
Yeah.
it's honoring and accepting that they're there, valuing them for being there,
Mhm.
and learning how to work with them rather than to work without them,
Yeah.
or despite them.
And when you said the thing about being in a conference and saying, I feel, and things like, I remember getting coaching from like,
Yeah.
my leadership when I would say, like, I feel, and they're like, that's not a powerful word. You should use these alternatives
It is
because
a
the way
powerful
you've,
word.
right. But well, yeah, I know that now, but it's
Yeah.
like, that's not a powerful word. You need to say, I suggest, or
Mhm.
based on my experience or in my analysis.
Mhm.
And it's like the greatest people, the inventors, the founders, the CEOs trusted
Yeah.
their gut, and
Yes.
they had an idea
Yeah.
that came from the ethers, who
Right.
knows where, let's talk
Right.
about that part, and then and went for it.
Yes.
Yeah, who knows where. And then like that's how amazing. And then like you have these like middle manager, which I was one of them, middle managers who are like, no, rationalize, get the data. And it's like the people who did amazing thing in business, in technology, and all of that
Yep.
didn't go that route. They had a gut instinct about that this was a good idea, that this was worth pursuing, that this was worth putting their whole life into, or that whatever. And it's like the world will literally tell you no, and you still have to trust something within yourself that says, no, this is right. I'm going to go after it.
Yeah, we wouldn't have, I mean, the world would be so very different if we didn't have imagination, right? Or those other ways of knowing, because, a couple years ago was the anniversary of the moon, the first, moon launch. And I read an article, I think it was actually in Time magazine, maybe, about, and the opening phrase was basically, if someone didn't imagine it possible that we could go to the moon, we would have never gone, right? Like it starts in your imagination. It starts in a place where something comes in, something synthesizes, there's a spark of inspiration somewhere. And then through that spark, it's bringing it into, and this is actually my definition of creativity is the process through which the potential is birthed into reality. And that is what happened, right? Somebody saw that potential, somebody connected with that potential, dropped it in. If you want to talk about quantum physics, we could talk about that, right? It dropped into the field of reality, and then it was embodied, it was worked through, it was created, it was built, and then it happened. And that's the process that anything really happens. But
no, and I would even add that creativity starts when you receive that possibility in your brain. Like that's already, like the fact that you've had an idea, which I know every single person that watches this, you've had an idea. That's creativity. Like that's creativity already. Whether you did the full, as you said, birth, I love that word, birthed it into real manifestation, something that everyone can see and touch or experience or whatever. That's really following your kind of your intended purpose and all that. But even if you didn't do that, you had the idea, which means that you were creative.
Yes, it already was created. Exactly.
Yeah.
And just kind of carrying that through all of the ways that people receive information, those ways of knowing and those ways of being, right? That's those soul languages help carry that forward, because yes, I might have that idea and then I might speak it, right? And so the idea drops in, I receive it, then I speak it, right? So I've received it and I've expressed it, but maybe it's not me that actually creates it in the biggest form, right? Like it's entelechy, right? It's reaching its potential. But somebody then, an architect or an engineer, then receives that from me. So then they're receiving and they're taking that and then creating the blueprint for it, right? That's another part of that process. And that's a different language maybe than I can speak, but it's carrying that energy forward. Then someone else comes in and actually builds it, right? And then someone else comes in and puts the technology in, and then someone else comes in and goes to space. And someone else tells the story about it, right? Like all of these ways of knowing and being, all of these ways of receiving and expressing are making that come, it's rebirthing it over and over and over again in many different ways.
Yeah. And I like to me, it's like that's the co-creative experience, right? Because anyone between like that story that you gave, like let's say like the architect, they envisioned working on a project like this, right? Or the story, the journalist was looking for the angle or the promoting invention or whatever it was, and so like we're all co-creating. Or even if we think about like us using the platform that we're using, whether it's StreamYard or Facebook, it's like we didn't create this, right? But we created the idea of I want to connect, right? And I want to connect in a specific way. And so even as users of things or as whatever, storytellers or whatever role you play, it's like you're also creating because of your desire for whatever it is, right? To have this experience or to have
Absolutely.
this easier or to whatever. So it's all kind of, we're all kind of coming together in that way. And I think with the moon thing, I mean, that was obviously before my time on this
Mine
earth,
too.
but
Yes.
but my understanding was that the world was very divided at that time.
Mm.
There was a lot going on. And so, yes, somebody had the idea about the moon, but I think the country wanted to unite around something. There was this desire of, whoa, we're so divided, which, hello, I'm getting chills because I'm like, that's where we are now,
Yeah.
right? Like, we feel like we're so divided. We're longing, like, we wish, we hope that there's something that could bring us together, that could make us proud, that can make us, just have that moment of celebration. Our desire is co-creating something for us. Obviously, we're still in the midst, we're still kind of pre that manifestation,
Yeah.
but we can all feel it. We're like, whoa, like there's a massive desire for us to kind of come together.
Yeah.
And for that generation, it was that, right? Like they manifested that, even though, like, yeah, there was only a few people on the actual spaceship. There was a few engineers, there was a, president, there was all that. And they were hands on,
Mhm.
but the broader country came in and said, we want something, which created kind of the atmosphere, if you will, for it to actually happen. And I think that's
Yeah.
where we are too in the, in this time and place. We're asking, desiring, putting it out into the universe. Maybe we haven't verbalized it, but our energy is like,
Well, I was
we're
going to
looking
say,
for something.
energetically, that's a whole nother thing too, because um, there's the embodiment of something and the creation of it, right? But the energy around something, I mean, that's how we could talk about the law of attraction, or, how that works, that when you are, everything has a frequency. And I think this is going to be really interesting to talk about with, you're a hypnotherapist, and I'd really love to talk about the science. Well, not even the science, but yes, the science, but also the experience
Mhm.
of that, and what you see in your work and with your clients as well. Because, when you are energetically on a frequency, sometimes you are on a frequency that is not in alignment with what you think you're on, right? And this goes back to that whole being out of your mind, because um, when we have a desire for something, that's our frequency, right? But we might think that we're looking to the solution for it and connecting with the solution, and our mind is, but energetically we're not necessarily, because what's going on in our subconscious mind is of a different frequency. So I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
Sure. One more thing though, before we move on to
Yeah.
that, just because like the whole part about tuning in, like really trusting your gut and kind of getting out of your mind. I was watching Kylie Jenner, of all people, her YouTube. She posted a video about like just, I guess, some behind the scenes, like for her company,
Hmm.
and I guess her marketing person or whatever, her person was like, we, if Kylie says she wants to do something, when she says it, like she knows it and she won't be like, does everyone agree? Or like, are
Right.
we all on the same page? Right. It's just like, okay, she knows it's right. And then this manager was saying, and we just trust it because she is always right.
Mm.
And I was like, because I mean, this is a person who's super big, right? And is a billionaire, right? And I know we're in a money focused society and stuff. So it's like the people that we look up to are creating in this way. They're not like whatever and you were laying it out too, right? The education system,
Hmm.
all these systems are teaching you to operate in a way that really just doesn't work. And then you
But
wonder
it
why.
works for it worked for someone at some point, right? Our education, sorry, I'm just like jumping
Yeah,
in just a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit,
jump in.
because our education system was set up during the Industrial Revolution to prepare people to work in big industry, right?
Right,
To bring in a common skill set so that they could do the thing in mass, right? Like we needed
right,
people to
right.
have a current um, or kind of cohesive skill set to do this thing, because that was what was happening in the world. But much has happened since then. And so that's, it doesn't necessarily fit anymore. And where we are right now, we need something different in all different ways, shapes, and forms. And so actually, I really love that you brought that in with Kylie Jenner, actually, too, because what if more of the time we heard that, right? What if more of the time it's like, that resonates for me for sure. I recently created a summit, which was the thing that birthed this podcast, right? Like the thing that this came from was the summit that I did. And I got the inspiration for it. I created it, and it happened in a very short period of time, because by the time I spoke it into existence, I already knew. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that this is what I was going to do, and this is how it was going to work, and this was who was going to be involved, and these are all the ways that it was going to open up new pathways into different things. And so when I came and spoke it out loud and started talking to people to bring them into it, I knew I was absolutely in alignment, mind, body, spirit. However you want to look at it, everything was aligned. I had a 100% absolute alignment and clarity on it.
Yeah.
But I remember some people said to me, like, I don't know. You're like thinking this. Have you really thought this through? That's really fast. That's a fast time to turn it around. Is that going to really work? Well, I had been dreaming about this, thinking about it, synthesizing it for a long time. It's when I actually chose to speak it out loud that suddenly it seemed like it was happening really fast. But I knew that. And I think that's when you said that about Kylie Jenner, I was like, oh, that's because she's already gone through all that. She's gone through that process. She knows, she's weeded out everything. She's integrated it. She's, and so when you speak it and you're certain about it like that, and you are in alignment with your ways of knowing and your ways of being, then what if there was more trust that when we did really have that clarity, it was honored? Right.
Yeah. And I know we're talking about huge things like starting companies or having summits and things like that, but this works for everything. And actually the example that they were talking about in the video was when she decided to go to vegan products, one, and then two, when she said, you know what, let's clear out all of Instagram. So they deleted everything and started with one picture. And of course, like that removes all your engagement, like all of the data and all that stuff. But they were like, it just felt like the right thing to do. So it's even something like, should I post this today? You know, you just feel like, this feels right. Or sometimes you're like, no, it doesn't. Or should I purchase this? Should I not? And it's like, I still have moments where I'm like, I know I did that out of alignment. I did that out of, fear, or I did that out of this and that. And sometimes I even know that I'm doing it in the moment, but I'm so in my like desperation or whatever I'm feeling at the moment that I'm like, I'm just gonna buy it, or like, okay, I'm just gonna book it because I just know I need to get it done, and I said I would, and I'm just gonna book the flight or the hotel or the buy the thing or whatever. And it's like I'm doing it out of alignment and it never goes right. Like it doesn't. And it's like you have to kind of test it and like pay attention, and it does suck, but at least oh, okay, it was my energy at that time. Like it was my misalignment. And then versus like, oh, I posted that thing or I did that and I didn't think I was going to do anything. I had no expectations, but it like, look what happened.
Right. I like to say when it resonates, I don't hesitate. So like, right.
Write it down.
Write it down. Use it. When it resonates, I don't hesitate. And that's so true. Like I've had so many instances where like I feel very clear in my ways of knowing and being at this point. And so when something resonates and I act on it without thinking about it, now that may sound scary to some people because they were like, well, what about, all the things? It's not that I don't incorporate my brain and that part of knowing, right? It's that I don't get stuck there. Does that make sense? Like that difference, right? Because it's when you go into that analysis paralysis, when you go into that space where it's like, let me think about this, let me write out the to-do list and let me do those things, then you're not clear. If you don't have that clarity, then you're not fully aligned, you're not fully ready to do that thing. And that's okay, because not every time you come into a particular intersection or decision that you need to make, do you have to know like within an instant. But most of the time, if you really get present, you can find that clarity. And the more you practice doing that regularly, the better you get at that, the more efficient you get at it, so that you don't end up getting stuck in those loops. Right.
Yeah. So I listened to Abraham Hicks. I don't know if you do,
Yep.
like law of attraction stuff. They explained that when the universe gives you an idea, it's not like the universe is like, hey, here's an idea. Now go work really, really hard and figure it all out, and we're going to watch you.
Mm-hmm.
The universe gives you, like, which if you think about it, like, that's so ridiculous, but that's exactly what we think. We're like, that's a brilliant idea. Let me go, like, whatever. And it's like, relax. Like, if the universe gives you the idea, it's going to give you the path to bring it, to birth it to life. You know, and I love the word birthing, because I feel like it's like anytime I think about whatever's like coming to, birthing really helps me. Not that I've ever given birth or ever been a mom, but the idea of it is like, it's there. It's there. It's just
Growing.
becoming, it's
It's
growing, it's
becoming.
this, and it's like, and we think like we have an idea and it's like, okay, let's make it happen. It's like, relax. It's going to happen. If you think about a mother, right, with the baby there, it's not like she's like drawing the eyeball. Like, she's not,
I love that.
just has to chill, just relax.
Yeah.
It's going to happen, and you're going to know when it's time. Oh, you're going to know when it's time.
Oh, you're gonna know.
Oh, you're gonna know. So it's like, I love the birthing, and also because it's like painful, I still need the universe to answer why it's painful, because I don't understand that part. Like, why can't it be easy? I do. I have that question out to
Yeah.
the universe. I'm like, please explain to me why that has to be painful, though.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that there's a part of it too, and I haven't given birth, so I can't speak to that, but I can speak to, I've definitely birthed many creative projects in the world, and many, relationships and concepts and things like that. And while there's not necessarily always the physical pain that comes with giving birth, and if anyone's on live and has anything to say about this, share about it. I'd love to hear it too. Please.
We're going to get all these moms like, oh, y'all.
But what I was going to say is that there is this kind of, there's the contraction and then the relaxation, right? There's this kind of, it pushes things through, and our body knows how to do that, because we do have to hold in, the baby while it's growing, but then we also have to allow it to be birthed, right? And I think that's similar to what happens in the creative process, where we come into areas or times or moments of that contraction, right? And then there's this release. And there's something really beautiful about that energy, because what it does is it brings us, I tend to see things either way expanded or way detailed, right? Like I kind of go back and forth between these two energies, these two ways of experiencing something. And to me, that process is really helpful, because if you only see it from one perspective, then you're not really getting the full experience, right? Like as you kind of open up and expand, you see like possibility, right? But then you've got to come back through and come into, if you're actually going to make something happen, right, it has to come back in. You have to see kind of the details. And like you said, the mother isn't necessarily, drawing in the eyeballs and the things like that, but it's happening within her body, right? It's happening in conjunction with, in collaboration with her energetic being, her physical being. And the
Mhm.
more she's carrying, as she's nurturing herself, she's nurturing the baby, right? And there's this whole kind of relational process that's happening. And I think that happens with anything that we're creating, whether that is a human or that is a relationship or that is a creative endeavor of some sort,
Right.
having that, everything kind of has that same cycle. Even our breath, right? Our lungs contract and expand, and it helps move things through. And so that doesn't necessarily answer your question about why pain is a part of the
The answer
cycle.
came to me, so I can share now.
Okay, excellent.
This is which I could go back and talk about soul language too. No, but
Yeah.
yes, the process of contraction, all of that, that is a creative process in everything that you see, and in like the chaos of bringing anything to life. Absolutely. But with what you were saying, I think the main point that I was making is that the mother just has to allow.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
just being in a state of allowing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about like, okay, let's give a percentage, like what is mother doing versus what is life itself doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, the mother just has to relax.
Yeah.
Life will do it. But it's like, if we're not talking about birthing, right? We're talking about our ideas and we're talking about that. It's like we try to do the universe's job. We need to like chill and allow and receive and all of that. And okay,
Mm-hmm.
so what I received right now is that I saw a TikTok about places that explained that when a mother's giving birth, that painful moment is sort of like the death of the maiden.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also like kind of what's required for this individual to know that she is strong and powerful enough. Like it's never beyond the possibility or the means or capability of the person. So yes, it is painful, but it's contained within that person's abilities, and it's required so that this person knows the limits, like how broad and strong and
Yeah.
capable they are. And that's actually what allows them to be the mother that's required for the
Mm-hmm.
child.
That's
And if you
beautiful.
think about like the analogy of like the caterpillar turning into a
I
butterfly,
was just going to go there too. Like they have to struggle, right? In order
you
to
have to
build the
struggle. Yeah.
strength.
Because if you help them out, if
Yeah.
you cut it open, they won't be able to fly.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's kind of like when you go to the gym, it, sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's strenuous. It's not
Mm-hmm.
painful. It shouldn't be painful. It's
Right.
strenuous for the purpose of building you to a level where you're now strong and you know it
Mm-hmm.
because you've done it. Like you did that. So I think that's what it's about.
And that process too at the gym, I mean, really what's happening is there are these little micro tears in your
Mhm.
muscles, right? And then they heal and they heal stronger. And it's
Yeah.
like it's the same with, I mean, you could talk about scar tissue or you could talk about, from an emotional standpoint of, the phrase that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think that can be used in a very toxic way, but it also can be used as an as a metaphor to say it's not. I think when we think of that, sometimes we think of it as the extreme thing, right? Like, oh, if that didn't kill you, then you're stronger from it. And not that you are seeking out opportunities that are pushing you to that breaking point, but more
Life
so
will do it
about,
for you, don't worry. You
but
don't
like,
gotta seek anything out.
no, you definitely don't. But more about really like, what is the underlying energy of that? Like, what's the underlying lesson of that is that, every time we come into a challenge, um, that challenge is there to help
Mhm.
us be stronger, right? Like, and we can we can put ourselves in challenging
Mhm.
spaces on purpose, and sometimes those challenges are out of our comfort zone and out of our safety zone as well. But when they're a little bit out of our comfort zone but not quite in out of our safety zone, right? Like, and they're in that sphere of growth, that's where we grow. That's where,
Mhm.
like, you can actually look at the learning process. It's like a bullseye, right? And
Yeah.
that middle area is your comfort zone. And when you're there, it's comfortable, but you're not learning, you're not growing necessarily, or it's at a very, very slow rate. And then there's the outer ring, which is like the out of balance, right? This is where it becomes dangerous. And you go into that, sympathetic nervous system where you're just like in fight or flight or freeze, or like you start getting that tunnel vision, you start closing off those receptive parts of you to be ready to deal with whatever danger that you're having. But in between there is the sweet spot. And that's where the learning can occur. That's where the growth can occur. And so, yeah, it's not, not those parts that are really actually physically dangerous or mentally, emotionally dangerous, and not the places where you're just kind of like, I'm chilling, this is cool. But somewhere in the middle.
Although I will say for me, the art of relaxation, which is what I call it now, is absolutely an art. I did not know how to chill. And it's something like we almost expect things to go wrong and be hard and all that. And that's also not supposed to be the way it's supposed to be. So it's like, not that there is a should or anything, but it's like you have to know how to relax, and it's not easy.
No, again, because we could go back to the very first part of the conversation that's not what we're taught. But again, it's that
it's unlearning everything that you were told about how life works.
Yeah.
In order for you to be like, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can be without thought. I can sit here.
Yeah.
I am worthy of existing.
Yeah.
That part I think is so hard for people, because it's like you're told you're not worth existing, essentially. I mean, nobody actually says that, but you're not worth existing. So you have to try really hard, and you have to produce things, and you have to bring value to the world. But it's like, no, actually, you can just sit and you're worthy.
Well, and that's where the integration happens, right? Like, so yeah, there's the action part. And again, it's like lungs breathing or birthing, right? The contraction and the ease, that it's in that process that it moves forward, because you might be producing, but how many people here have ever experienced burnout? Me. When you're just going like that, like you burn out, right? But then also there's the whole, if you're not acting and you're just only receiving or only still, like that is definitely needed in that cycle. But if you're not taking any action, that's when you get stuck. That's when apathy comes in, or that's when, you just kind of, you lose that action, that momentum, that motivation, and it's much harder to regain it. So yeah, it's do the action, produce, and then rest and receive. And that's again, parasympathetic
cycle.
Yeah.
That's so balanced. I'm like, that's so balanced. I wish it was like that. No, but yeah, no, I think that's a good ideal. But what you said, like when it resonates, don't hesitate. Because I think when you think about, like once you start learning all of these things and you're like, okay, I can just chill. I know how to meditate. Da, da, da. But I think when the action piece comes into play, at least where I've gotten held up, it's like, but wait, how do I know? Like, that like hesitation. And it's like, it's taken a while. I'm still working through it, but like knowing when it's right, knowing this is it, and not trying to act just because you have to, right? Because all the motivational people tell you to. Because I grew up in that world, right? Where it's like massive action now, every day.
Set your goals, eye on the prize, like all of it.
Right. Like hustle, be the last person standing, wake up earlier, sleep later, like
drive early.
So for me,
just putting that in there.
So I totally agree with the action, but for me, the unlearning of that has been such a massive piece that I'm still in the point where I'm like, can I just chill? Because I can't sometimes.
Like sometimes you have those periods of time where it may be, especially if you've been denying that, right,
Right.
for a long time, if it's not years or decades, then the period of time that you might need to have that rest and receiving and that downtime might need to be longer than your normal cycle, right? You might need to have kind of this extended period of time and then start bringing that balance in kind of little by little.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And I don't
so,
know,
oh, go ahead.
do you know about human design?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a projector too. So like it's even more important. And it's like I
Mhm.
did start figuring that out towards the end of like my corporate career, that I was like, wait, I'm actually very efficient in short bursts, and I'm not doing this. I'm not going to be here all day. I'm not going to not take breaks. Like, so I did
Mhm.
end up figuring that out on my own, but then with like figuring out my human design, it really validated that that's what I need and that's how I need to operate.
That's great.
So yeah. Also, I never answered your soul language question, if you want me to go back there.
That's okay. I was actually going to say, I would love to hear you talk about what you said. You know, it's taken you a while to get to that point where right? Like to be able to move into that place of action. What are the ways? How do you know?
Yeah. So I am, and I think by this point in our conversation, I think I've kind of implied this, but my emotions, like that's how I know what's true and what's not true, and if this feels right, if I'm going in the right direction, if I'm facing the wrong direction. It's like it has to feel easy, it has to feel good, it has to excite me. I have to be energized about it. And if it's not that, I'm learning to chill. Because my super hyper action part of me, when I first started to like come to myself, I wanted to work really hard to get myself to that place,
Mhm.
which is like,
Yeah.
so it's just like working, like trying to do all the things, like meditate hard,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I got to sit on this cushion for 2 hours and not move a bone in my body, right?
I'm like,
That's,
should I meditate for a whole day? Would that
yeah.
help? Like what do I do? And of course, like I couldn't even shut down my mind for a minute, so that didn't work. Um, but yeah, so I think I tap into my emotions quite a bit. Um,
Mhm.
uh, this idea of kind of getting out of my mind is important, and so that I think looks different. Sometimes I have to go in nature,
Mhm.
and observe, or walk, or just sit and just get out of my space. Because I do believe our thoughts are things. And I think sometimes when we're in a physical space, sometimes they're just around us, and I think Maya Angelou has this thing about words and crawling up, and like she really
Mhm.
like personifies them. And I'm like, oh, because she personifies them kind of um, like things like crawling and like being all
Mhm.
over the place and stuff. And so sometimes if I'm just too in my head, I'll leave, physically leave. And sometimes it's just outside. Sometimes
Mhm.
I go somewhere just to like give myself that space to think. Writing has always been, I think that's really my like where I go.
Mhm.
Or I mean, it's like I would consider that my art, I guess, if I had,
Yeah. Yeah.
an art piece, it would be writing. I've written since since I can remember, but I've had a journal since I was like maybe 12 or 13. I still have all of them.
Mm.
Um, and so writing has been a good way for me to express myself and just let out the emotions, the things, the baggage, the anger, like whatever it is, just write it out. And then after I do that, I always feel better. And then, but what it kind of evolved to is now I can receive through that method, right?
Mhm.
So I can ask a question and I answer myself. Or sometimes I'm writing and I'm like, this isn't even me.
Yeah.
Like, you
So,
know what
do
I
you
mean?
know the
Yeah.
process of automatic writing?
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of it, and I kind of tried to do it as a method, but I'm like, I think I'm already doing it, so I just didn't really look too further into it.
Yeah, it's a form of channeling, and you can channel your higher self. You can channel your spirit guides. You can channel your inner child. You can channel all sorts of
Yeah. Yeah.
ways through automatic writing. But I'm actually doing a workshop in September about that,
So cool.
which will be, it'll be a lot of fun. But I was going to say also that I wanted to just add in one thing when you were talking about journaling and getting things out, right? Like, in that thoughts and words as these kind of like beings, right, crawling around. Our thoughts actually have weight. You can weigh a thought in a lab. And so when people
That's
say,
cool.
our thoughts might, I have this weight, right? This heaviness. Those thoughts that are those, lower frequencies, especially things that are tied to grief and anger and frustration and sadness and all of those, they literally, actually, probably not literally, they actually weigh us down, right? And when you use a creative method, whether it's art or writing or dance or movement or singing, anything like that, that's that process of taking that, what's up here, whether it's actually in your brain or floating around beside you, right, in the field of potential, you're taking that, you're dropping it in, embodying it, and moving it out. So you do feel lighter, right? You do have more space for something because you've already moved it through, you've moved it out, and you're not kind of attached to that or holding on to it any longer. And there's kind of two things that you can then choose to do with that once you get it out, right? You can choose to stay attached to it even after it's out, or you can choose to release it. And for those things that you want to create, that you want to continue engaging with, stay connected with it, keep coming back to it, return to it, add to it, grow it, right? Add give it water. That's the seed that you want to plant. And for those that aren't, then let that be the end of it, right? This is where they go. And then it's now no longer my responsibility because I've already given it its life cycle.
Yeah. And when you said dance, I'm like, that's always been a release for me too, a way that I express myself, and I'm just happy and all of that. And I think because it was even from when I was younger with my family, like we would dance, like that's just what we would do. But what I've been doing now that's more intentional is I will dance by myself at home, right? Not having to record myself, like, like I know there's a lot of TikToks, like just by myself, just in my body. And it feels good. It feels so good. And especially if there's a lot of energy right before I'm going to bed, I hate to like go to bed like that. I'll just dance, or I mean, sometimes I'll just do yoga, right? Because it's like, okay, I could just do a few stretches or whatever. But if I have the time and the privacy, I'll dance, and it just releases. And I think we hold emotions for women a lot in our hips. So a lot of like the circles and movements and stuff, and it's kind of funny because women naturally kind of dance that way. They move their hips and they do more circular, versus men are a little bit more like forward and straight, right? Like they're more like side to side. If you look at women, they like to roll, and they'll do like the shoulders, and they'll do like things like that. And it's funny because it's almost like, well, because it's a natural therapy for us. And of course we just think we're having fun, and people think we're just trying to be sexy or whatever, but it's like, it's, Mayra is allowing you
I love
well-being,
that. Here's your permission slip, right?
Here's your permission slip to shake those hips, move your body, and release that energy, because it's so good and it's so healthy. Do it every day.
I love that. I find that so occasionally I'll do just like intuitive dance, or I'll do I like to do chakra dancing, which is just incorporating music that's specifically aligned with the energies of that chakra.
Nice.
And especially with this the sacral chakra, I find that it's a very like all the moves that you were describing, like absolutely way more so than even I would ever dance in front of anyone. Like way more. And I remember the first time I was doing this, I was like, what am I doing? Like, this feels like like
Because it's
weird.
sexualized, right? It's
Yes.
sexualized, and then so then we feel like, oh, so then this is bad. I'm trying to be da 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 this like,
I was not
and
trying to
it's like
impress
it's not. We're
anyone.
alone
Yeah.
in the privacy of our rooms, and it's
Yeah.
still what naturally comes to us.
Yeah.
I like to move our hips in that way, and then for those people who don't know this, the sacral is the lowest part, kind of
Thank
the
you.
just
No,
just in
that's
case.
good. I get so in that space.
No,
I
that's okay.
appreciate you bringing that in, but
So it's
yeah,
kind of
like
right
that's
between the hip area
in your
ish, like
hips.
pelvis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so I know we could chat all day long.
I don't even know
We
what
will
time.
No, that's okay. It's great. We definitely will chat more, and I know I want you to talk about how people can find you and what kinds of things you're
Oh my
working on and
gosh.
putting out in the world. So that would be great.
Sure. So let me just touch on hypnotherapy because I know you asked me a quick question. So let me just touch on that, and then we can wrap up.
Yeah.
Um, Everything that we talked about the thoughts being things and the emotions and moving that forward, all of that is what hypnotherapy can help with. So a lot of people have their methods and their ways of processing and are super in tune with themselves. And whether you are or whether you aren't, I think hypnotherapy can help you uncover kind of what's beneath, what's holding you back. And I think the emotion or the response I get almost every time I do a session is I say, "How do you feel?"
Mm-hmm.
They always say light. I feel
Mm-hmm.
light.
Yeah.
So it's, when you were talking about the weight of the thoughts, the weight of all of that, and sometimes the weight of emotions,
Mm-hmm.
it's like for me, it's just a method of releasing that energy in a conscious way. And we live in such a like mind place that it's like we feel like we can't release it until we like know exactly what it is and process, and so for the people like that, which is me, I'm like, I can't just like let it go and just be like, it's like, no, I want to process it.
Yeah.
Like I want to know where it came from and why. I can't just let it go because I just feel like it'll just come back. I don't know. It's not true. It's not true. You can
Yeah.
release things just on your own. But for those people who want to process, who really want to understand and also want that energetic release, like hypnotherapy is definitely a method that you can use.
Mm-hmm.
So people can connect with me at Mayra Leen on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. I'm just got on Clubhouse. So that's a way. And yeah, should we tell them what we're up to, you and I?
Yeah. Tell them what we're up to, of course. And just a side note, I'll put your links
Yeah. Okay.
in the thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, for those who watch till the end, you get this announcement. Regina and I are collaborating on a book
Yes.
with other amazing individuals, and it will be coming out very soon. And you guys heard it here first, and we're so excited for you guys to see it. It'll come out on Kindle first, and we'll share all that information as soon as it's out. And then, if you prefer to have a physical copy, it'll also be available on Amazon.
Yeah. So, and the book is all about creativity. So when I spoke earlier about, and Hollis is on here, who is actually, we're working on this project with as well, and another one of the authors and that just amazing people that are working on this book.
Yeah.
And the definition that I gave earlier about creativity being, birthing the potential into reality, that's kind of the teaser for my story as well. How do you define creativity, Mayra?
It's being yourself, existing,
Yeah,
because
I
you
love it.
are just, your life is a creative process, and so there's no way you can't create.
Yeah,
Is really my
absolutely.
definition. It's just you allowing yourself to be you. And actually, Hollis and I had a conversation earlier today, and what I learned from her, it's like if you're repressing yourself, you can't express yourself, right? If you're expressing
Mhm.
yourself, then you're not repressing yourself. So expression, just being yourself, whatever that means, right? We talked about so many methods just in this call.
I know.
Then
We
you're
did.
creating,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just you being you and allowing yourself and giving yourself permission to be you, because whether people say it's right or wrong or too sexy or whatever, different things, it's you expressing yourself. And if you allow yourself to do that, then you're creating and you are creative.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. 1,000% agree. All right. Beautiful, beautiful conversation. Hollis dropped in there too. September 17th is the launch day. And yeah, Creativity is Whatever You Want It to Be is going to be
Get the
out soon.
book.
So exciting. Beautiful conversation today. Thank you to everyone who came and joined us live and, came and commented and shared and liked. And to anyone who's watching this later, definitely, hashtag replay, drop some comments in there. We'll be on the lookout for it. And we will be back again soon. So
yes, we will.
talk to you all soon. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.